starting now. Once upon a time, there was a king. Of a great place he was. And the king was thinking, I want to create a secret place. A secret place where I can then create whatever I want that may control other parts of the world. But it needs to be a secret city. And so he called some of those that worked with him. He gathered them in his office and he said, can we create this secret city? And they said yes. For they knew that they could become more powerful with what they created in that city. And so they began to work on where that secret city would be placed. And as they began to build, they realized they needed others to help them build that secret city. But they wanted others that were, in their eyes, not as good as them, inferior to them. They brought them in, and they wanted not to see them. So they placed them in a secret city within the larger secret one. And so it was that there the king had created a secret city to gain power. And then the leaders created a secret city of folk that were beneath them. But some secrets are not meant to be kept. Some secrets are meant for the light of day to shine. One of the secret cities, of course, is here. You hear that name all the time. Outside of here, you probably, it's part of what's in all the advertisement when people come to Oak Ridge. This is a secret city. But I got to learn, when I was here before, I got to learn some of the history about another secret city there. I went to the Oak Ridge Museum where Ray Smith is, a historian, and I walked in, and there is all around the museum, if you haven't been, you ought to go, all around that museum, there's this huge panorama of someone having taken a picture from an aerial picture of Oak Ridge from some time ago. And it's a great picture. It goes all the way around. But when I was there, and I was there with Ray and another friend of mine, Charles Crow, and I said, where was the first place? And they wanted to show me where was the first place that African Americans who were brought here to help to build the buildings of this area, who were brought in to do the domestic work and the cleaning of the place, where did they live? And both of them pointed over to that end of the wall right there. They said they lived right off of that. There was no picture of them. I said, oh, they live right there? Yeah, right over there, behind those trees. I said, oh, well, that was intentional. They made sure to never see them. The trees blocked them. Both Ray and Charles were kind of silent for a moment. And I said, and where is Scarboro now? Where's where the African American community was moved to? They said, over at the end of this, not in the picture, behind the trees. And so I learned that the community of Scarboro, amazing community of people, thrived, but it thrived in secret. In the early 1950s, a person who was white could go through their entire life and year and never meet a person of color, ever. And it was not the same way. Scarboro had to find ways to interact. And so there was a desire for there to be equality in various places, for the secret city to not be secret, but to find its place. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. heard that song before? Raise your hand if you have. Oh, wonderful. So I grew up with that song, hands down. It's a song that came it's a song that's been around actually much longer than the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. It's been around so long, people don't even know the beginning of it. That's how far it's been around. We shall overcome. And it happened, 1954. Somebody tell me something big happened 1954 in history that we all know or should know. Can somebody tell me big thing happened 1954? Somebody raise their hand. Tell me they were in history. Make your history teachers happy. Yes, back there. Yes. Say it again. Robertsville was created. That may have been something big, yes. But let's see something else. Yes. Wait. Go ahead. There are first black students to integrate. So, the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case, 1954, led by Thurgood Marshall before he was a judge. That happened in 1954. Woo! We had overcome. Yeah! All right. We can integrate. We can go and we can get into other schools. We can do it. It was a new day. And 54 was that year. And so the law was changed and you had to integrate your schools, but that's not what they did. That's not what they did. You see, the word integration means I take a group of folk from this place, and there's a group of folk from this place, and I take some people from this place and put them over there, some people from this place and put them over there, and you integrate. But they didn't integrate. They desegregated, which meant, in most cases, they shut down this building and moved everybody over to a building that didn't always want them. Desegregation. So when you speak about this, please know that there's a difference in how that is said. 1955, the word came down at the end of the school year, the early part of the school year in June, that the next year, all of the black students would no longer go to Scarboro High School. They would go, and middle school, they would go to Roberts School, and they would go to the Oak Ridge High School. They had their own school there. That would be like saying to you all, saying that, well, particularly the seventh graders, and I don't know which side seventh graders, so the saying that seventh graders that, no, we're just picking you up and we're taking you to the other school. This school is demolished, it's gone, it's finished. We don't care what you know or who you knew here, we're moving them off. And you have no choice. In Scarboro, the school was like an L, and it had first grade up to 12th grade. On one on the long aisle of that L, there was the first to the 8th graders. Then there were the administration offices, kind of at the heel of that L, and then there were the high school. It was a cool thing when you got to leave the 8th grade and come around that corner, and you knew you were not with the little kids anymore. You were high school. There were certain things that were there. You had incredible teachers with advanced degrees that did this work. They came and taught at the school. The school would do field trips. The school taught people well. Yeah, they didn't have the best of things. They're the best of teachers that cared about them. And they knew they would be good at what they did. And so they had overcome. It was going to be a good thing. But really? Not. I mean, everything you knew, your teachers, the way you get to school, the place where you knew how to even eat in a cafeteria, eat anywhere, all of that would be destroyed. And you didn't have a choice. It wasn't like they said, well, we really want you to desegregate. No. It is shut down, and if you don't listen, then you can't work here. Not only that, it is shut down. And if you want to go to a colored school, you had to you had to take the bus out of town over to Austin Colored School. And that's where you would go to school. It was not an easy thing. So there's a couple folks that are talking in the back. Like, if you're turned around while I'm saying that, it really doesn't look good. So they made it so you had no choice. You had no choice. You would be at another school. We're not afraid. We're not afraid. We're not afraid this day. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we're not afraid this day. I don't need you to do that every time. But I also don't need to hear it behind me unless you're going to sing with me. We're not afraid. That's how the song went. It was, we're not afraid. That's what you said. But on that morning, he was very afraid. He woke up early. He woke up early, and as he usually did, and walked over to the bus stop in the Scarboro community where he lived. He got over there and he went to the bus stop where he was to catch the bus. His mother said, his parents said, do you have enough money on you? See, this was something new. And before, all he did was walk to school, and he walked to school with his friends. And he walked to school with his friends, but now he had to take the city bus and wait for that. And so he waited. He met his best friend along the way. Usually they joked and laughed, had a little something to say. But today they kind of stood a little in misery with each other. Because today they wouldn't go to the same schools. He would go to the high school, and his best friend would come here to Robertsville Middle School. And so it was. They waited. Some of the students were talking amongst themselves. Some of the students were talking about the students that had come from the Oak Ridge High School. They had been the journalist students, and they were white students that had come in, and they had asked questions. And they'd come over to Scarboro School to meet some of the students, to tell them about their school, and to say, we welcome you. And they remembered how kind some of them were, how curious they were about where they were at. If one of those students had actually read an article by one of those white young journalists, they would have noted that they said, I was surprised. I was surprised at how they were not given what we were given. Their building wasn't the same. And it was a big difference. And so he waited for the bus, and when it was time to get on, he got on the bus, and the bus got quiet. No one said anything. He rode along the bus. Down Wilberforce they did, and picking up people along the way. And on the way out of the community, they rode down Tuskegee. Because you see, in Scarboro, even today, all the streets are named after historically black colleges and universities. It was a reminder that education was of the utmost importance. As they came down Tuskegee, he thought, maybe I'm kind of like one of those Tuskegee airmen. I'm taking a flight, fighting for freedom. They rode the rest of the way to the school. He thought in his head about what his parents had said to him. Now keep your eyes down. Don't look in the faces of no white people now. Make sure that you speak clearly, but don't speak loudly. Walk on the walk on the side where people aren't. You don't want to bump somebody by accident. You got to be better than everybody else, else they won't even notice you at all. You have to excel here. Be safe. And he remembered those words. When they pulled up in front of the school, there were students outside waiting to help them get to their first classes. But this did not make him less afraid. You see, he started school as an African American, as a black young man at 14 years of age. He started Oak Ridge School 10 days after they found the body of Emmett Till in Mississippi. Now, if you don't know the story of Emmett Till, he was a Chicago boy. He was a teenager. His mama said if he doesn't get out of Chicago, he's going to get in some trouble. So she sent him down south, as happened with many, many African American families in those older days. They would send their young ones down south to where family was. And Emmett went down south. He had a little bit of a stutter, but he was a city boy, and he came down there looking at all that country. Down to Mississippi he was. And, well, he kind of got along, but he had to learn a whole lot of new things. They went to the store. He had to learn how to talk to people differently, because in Chicago, everybody seemed to talk the same to each other. But down here, you had to talk a certain way. There was a different kind of level. And it was reported that he went into a store and he asked for something, and it was reported that he whistled at a white woman. And the white woman asked him what he had done, and he said he didn't know. And his cousins got him out of there real quick. That woman reported that to her husband. And reporting it to her husband, the husband was infuriated, furious. How dare one of them folk whistle at my woman? We gonna go get them. They rode their car out to where he stayed. They asked for that boy, that one that was from up north. The uncle tried to say, no, nothing happened. Nobody here like that. Give us that boy, or we'll take you too. They didn't want to do anything. They came in the house. They pointed him out. And they took him out of that house. Boys, you two right there, I need you to get up. I need you to move. White shirt, black shirt, sitting beside each other, right there. You two know who you are. Get up. Right now. Right now. Get up. There you go. Thank you. It's been lovely. May I continue? Thank you. They took him out of the house. The uncle hoped that maybe they would talk to him hard, maybe punch him, maybe kick him. Maybe he would come back black and blue. But when morning came, he didn't come back. And he didn't come back that night. And that's when they made the phone call to his mother and said, we don't know where he is. We don't even know if he actually did what they said. days. Finally, his body came up out of the river. He had been put into a large old fan to weight him down. He had been so severely beaten, his eye was non-existent. His face was such you couldn't recognize him. Had it not been for something, a birthmark on him, he would not have been known. They brought his body out. They attempted to keep that body there in Mississippi. But it was the Brotherhood of Pullman Porters that clandestinely got that body, his body, and secretly put it on a train and took it back, took it up to Chicago. His mother had an open casket funeral because she wanted the world to see what happens to a black child if they might have said the wrong thing in the South. 10 days after that body was found and reported on, this young man, all of the Scarboro 85 entered a school, and he entered a school he knew people didn't want him there. And he was afraid. He kept his eyes down enough to see where he was walking, make sure he didn't see anybody from the left or the right, and he could see when his room number was. He came into the room, he greeted the teacher pointed him to a chair in the back. And he wondered, was this going to be every day? Every day he would have to walk in a way to make sure he did nothing wrong or anything that could be said wrong of him. Every day. He learned some things. He learned how to stay to the side of things. He learned that to kind of keep away from dark corners or around the corner. Sometimes he went outside the building and around so that he could get to another class because he didn't want to accidentally run into something. Some of the students in the school, they did all right. Some of the students, they joined the student council. They joined the National Honor Society, the first colored people to do such. Some of them joined basketball teams. They joined the basketball teams and played sports. Well, sort of played sports. It meant that they joined the team, they practiced with the team, but in most cases they couldn't play against the other team. Sometimes they couldn't even ride in the bus to where the other school was if the other school didn't want a Negro, as they called them, playing against them. And some were quiet like he was, keeping to himself, just do your work. And some said, I don't need to do this. Yes, there was no violence. No one was outside of the doors of Oak Ridge saying, we don't want you here. It wasn't like over in Little Rock, 2, 4, 6, 8, we don't want to integrate. It wasn't bombs that would happen a year later over in Clinton. It wasn't that. It's quiet. It was a young man being shoved into a locker every day. And no one saying anything to anyone. He was afraid. But he did know that if he had any real problems, there was somewhere he could go. We are not principals? Yes, he was a white principal. But Mr. Dunnigan was like, let's see, if I was to describe him in a story, he'd be like the sheriff in town. Yep, he'd be the old sheriff in town. He took a look at all of them, and he said, now look here, there won't be any trouble in my town, do you understand it? He told his wife and he told his two girls that went to the high school as well, he told them, this is the right thing to do, and we're going to make sure it's comfortable around here. Some of the students, before they got into school, they wrote on a large glass pane. They wrote, welcome in words. Mr. Dunnigan invited all the students to the auditorium. And he stood up in front and he said, we will not have any disrespect to the people in this school. If we see this again, we will find out who does this, and you will be gone. There was never anyone painting on the windows again. He was serious about it. But as a sheriff, when you start having folks against you, well, stuff starts happening. He would get phone calls to his house. His wife and his girls and himself would pick up an angry people saying what they were going to do to him, how they were going to do that, and he was going to get run out of town. But he had made a commitment, and this was right. And he would stand up for what he knew was right. That people needed to be together and learn. That was right. And so he stood his guard. And on the day they burnt a cross on the front of his lawn, well, he just cleaned it up and didn't get afraid. Because a good sheriff keeps everything under control. And he made sure. You see, the reason that they integrated that school on September 6th, the schools on September 6, 1955, was because this area was still considered a military area. And so when the law came down, they obeyed the law, which also meant that if anyone caused trouble, even the children, their parents could be fired and sent away. There's a reason for there not being violence. There's a reason that this was a time people forgot. There was no violence. But I have a question for you. Just because there's no violence, is there any harm? Somebody raise their hand and tell me, what do you think about that? If there's no violence, is there harm? Let's start over here, right this way. Back in the back, hand over this way, yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That is not, so he says, there's no violence, there's no harm. That's not true. That's not true. Somebody else tell me what they think about that concept of no violence. Yes? Wait, I have one person right here, so hold on. Go ahead. Even though there's no violence, there still may be some emotional harm. Okay, that's a good one. Someone else give me their thought. It's because there is no violence. Does that mean there is no harm? Young one right there on the edge. Hands up. Yes, you. Okay, so yes, it can. There is still violence, people being rude, the way that mental health and how words can affect people. And let's see, one more person. Let me see, hear a thought on that. So let me go over here. Excellent. That there can still be protests and if you don't want people around, and it still is hard on people and can be difficult on people. You all gave great answers, which I knew you would, because I know that you all live in a different time, and that you understand that violence and harm, that harm does not mean violence. That harm can be the way we treat somebody. And so Mr. Dunnigan, Principal Dunnigan, understood that that harm could come even though there was not violence. And he was a sheriff that tried as he could to root the harm out. We have been prepared. We have been prepared. We have been prepared this day. Now y'all should know this part. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we have been prepared this day. All right, not bad. Some of y'all got a little singing on you. Okay. You see, that boy and those students had already had a great principal. Her name was Arizona Officer. If you go in the Scarboro area today, in the community today, you will find the nursery and the early childhood education center is named after Arizona Officer. She had been asked to start the Scarboro school, asked to build it, and everybody she asked came and worked. And it was a wonderful school. She was a good teacher. Now, she's kind of like, I was trying to think of what is she like. And so somebody who's watched Wakanda Forever, what is the name of the girl that has like the Iron Man suit that she wears in it? Huh? Tell me? Riri Williams, okay? But what is her name? Like, does she have like a superhero name for that? Wait. I gotta hear it. I'll wait. Somebody raise their hand so they can tell me what that, the Riri Williams, does she have another name that she uses for the Superman? Ironheart, thank you so much. So, that's great, thank you. So what I see in Arizona Officer is Ironheart. She had this ability, this steel that was on her, that she created so that she could help others. She was also had a heart for goodness and kindness and respect. She respected her students at that school. She came with herself that was, she was a fine woman, and she had long legs, and she had thin lips and glasses, and her hair was done right. She always looked good, and she brought in people. When they finally were able to build the high school, the other school had been there a little while, but they didn't have the high school part until 1950. And she brought in people with advanced degrees. And so I want you to know what she knew. She knew they had cast-off desks. She knew they had cast-off books, but they did not have any cast-off teaching. They had exemplary teaching and exemplary teachers that believed in you. Sometimes she was hard. She would go in the community. She was one of those teachers that would go into your house and talk to your parents and help them understand where you were in school. And sometimes that was good, and sometimes that was not. Sometimes you didn't want that. But she also was the one that gathered students and took them to visit some of the schools, took them on ventures that they would never experience otherwise. She also was the one that taught them to dream about what they could be. And so they were prepared, even though they didn't expect it. They were prepared when they came to the new schools. If you go over to where the theater is, I don't ever know if y'all go over that area, but if you look on the outside of the theater, that's there. What is that theater called now? The Oak Grove? Grove Center, the center. On the outside of the Oak Grove Center, you will see a picture of her sitting with students around her. She is honored for preparing. Well, the year ended. No violence happened. There was harm, but it wasn't really talked about then. And there was the prom. There were going to be seniors that were Black seniors that graduated that year. Sherry Hawkins, who's still alive, is one of those people. And she and others, they were going to go to the junior senior prom. And it was going to be the first integrated one in all of the Southeast, just like it was the first integration in all the Southeast. But after the prom, there always was the community that had an after-prom festival or after-prom festivities that they did. But those paying for the after-prom festivities did not want the Black students there. It was one thing that they were at the school together, but it was a whole other thing in the community because the community was still segregated. The community was still restrooms that were Black and white and restaurants that were Black and white. You still had that in the community. It may have been in the school, but it wasn't outside of it. And so the people planning the festivity for the after prom, well, they said, let's give a banquet for the colored students, the Black students. We'll give them money and they can go have their own banquet. And those students knew, we didn't work all this, so we could go do that. So they accepted the money, and they turned that money over and gave it to the School for the Blind, I believe it was, because they didn't want to have festivities that were separated. And when the first students walked in, 4 couples walked in to the integrated senior prom. They walked in. These are people they had gotten to know. It had been a whole year. They walked in. A couple sat at a table with others that they knew. And the white students got up and walked away. No one spoke a word to them. That's when they learned that they had only been tolerated, not accepted. The graduation happened and desegregation continued. And the name of the Scarboro 85 disappeared because other schools started integrating and there was violence there. And people began to say here in Oak Ridge, see, we did good. We're good. We did all right. We didn't have that. We're all right. Which meant they forgot. They forgot that the Scarboro students already had a school. They'd already had teachers. They'd already had what they needed. That was taken away from them. And they were put in a place where they were just tolerated. And they were forgotten. And one day, Mr. L.C. Gibson was in a meeting and somebody said, Clinton 12 was the first integrated school to happen on the southeastern side. And he said, no, that's not right, that's a lie. And people started working on it. I think you have someone here. There's a coach, I think John Spratling is here in the house. Coach Spratling, Miss Rose Weaver, they began to look for those stories and interview those people and began to say, we must tell the story. We must tell the story. We must tell the story. We will not allow them to be forgotten again. We will not allow a secret city in the secret city to exist anymore. And so they began. And when I was brought in, all they said was, can you tell a story to help people know who they are? Here's what I want you to take away from today. This is what I want you to take away. I want you to remember that the reason that you can sit and go to school and be with people that don't necessarily look like you is because the students that were taken from their school don't. Don't do it again. Were taken from their school and came here even though they didn't want to, but they still did it, and they did it with grace, and they did it opening the path. Number two, I want you to hear this. Just because you do not commit violence against a person, you can cause harm by the way you ignore a person's voice, by the teasing you do to a person, by the bullying you do, by the words you say. Look to do good, not harm. And finally, I want you to be proud of your town that is trying now to remember and say, we hold up these as heroes right here in our town in Tennessee. And when a memorial is made here of the Scarboro 85, I want you to visit. I want you to recognize reconciliation can happen between cultures, ethnicities, religions. It can happen. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. I do want you to repeat after me on this one. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will not forget. We will not forget this day. Oh, Scarboro 85. Scarboro 85. We'll keep your memory alive. We will not forget today. Thank you all so much for letting me have the opportunity to talk.